Here we are, episode 31 of the Two Russells podcast, and we're back in the studio, Russell, after, you've been on a world tour, haven't you? Mauritius. Yes.
Mauritius via Dubai, yeah, that was very interesting. And,
nice to see you with your clothes on.
I think, am I allowed to say it was a well-deserved break? I think it was a well-deserved break, but family holiday, back just yesterday, so if I'm a bit jaded, it's because of, 12 hours flying yesterday.
You're never jaded, and what a wonderful experience it was to go out on tour and to have those soundbite episodes, wasn't it? It was absolutely fantastic, straight off the rawness of the Women in Estate Agency.
And I think, all credit to the team at Women in Estate Agency that they allowed us to do that. I mean, It's quite a risk. A, it could have gone wrong, and B, I mean, it's us, after all. They didn't tell us what we could say, didn't tell us what we couldn't say, and I think, actually, when you look at what Danny, Vicky and Anne said, albeit they just come off stage fresh, I hope you agree that we really replicated their stories very, very well for those that weren't actually able to get to the conference. But 2026, you got to go. I mean, genuinely,
definitely, it's
one of the most inspiring conferences in this sector that you can go to.
Yes, and I hear there may be something happening with tables turning on podcasts very soon.
Yes, but it won't be on this one. It's on somebody else's. So we'll see what happens. All will be revealed.
Talking of reveals, let's reveal our guest today. So it's a great pleasure to welcome to the Two Russells podcast, Simon Leadbetter, the founder of Unchained.co.uk. Simon, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
He looks really hesitant, doesn't he?
Just conscious of some of our exchanges on LinkedIn. I'm just wary where this might go.
I think we should say...
You're two friends now, because over the bit of history, wasn't there?
Well, here's the thing, right? I'd like to think we are. Yes. We definitely differ in terms of our politics, in that I'm right and he's wrong. But is it true to say, Simon, is it fair to say that before we'd met, back in your Connell's, Countrywide days, but as we now know Connell's Countrywide, you didn't like me very much, did you?
You were a pain in the neck. Everything that was going on at Countrywide, it was like, not Quirk again. How do we shut this man up?
Because I did bait you a lot.
You did, yes.
Not you personally, but the Countrywide brand.
Well, I was the group marketing director under the Alison Platt era, for part of it.
Good luck.
Okay.
And it was a challenge. I went into troubleshooting because they were in trouble. We sorted a lot of stuff out, but we're still going south generally. And you kept popping at us in the trade press. And it's like, just give us a break.
You should have reached out. We could have had lunch. We could have had drinks. We could have come to some
We've
kind
made up for it, it's fair to say.
Come to some kind of PR retainer arrangement. I mean, who knows?
You were the enemy at the time.
Well, I was. But, I mean, it's a bit of a digression, Russ, so forgive me. I had an agenda at the time. That agenda was I wanted to be invested in or bought by a big estate agency player. That was one of my options. It wasn't the ultimate
So you needed
goal.
to be noisy.
Yeah, noisy, and actually to try... I did meet Peter Long once, actually. He was the chairman, and it wasn't a very productive meeting, basically because he didn't know what he was talking about when it came to the property industry, go figure. But I thought if I can't get legitimate attention in terms of where I think the benefit of the online model can be utilised by corporate, whether it's the tech or whatever, not necessarily the fee proposition, but the tech, then I have to be a bit sharp-elbowed about it, and that's why I kind of gave you a hard time. But it was fun.
And it's a golden rule of marketing is if you're the small guy, pick on the big guy.
You've got nothing to lose.
You know, David and Goliath, people like the underdog. And in reality, the advice that I give all the time when I talk about marketing is if you are the small player, you have all the disadvantages.
You've got to shout,
Pick on the big
shout.
guy. That's what Richard Branson did with Virgin.
Well, we should come back to that later when it comes
Mm.
to particularly self-employed agents, because I think that there's perhaps some advice you can give in terms of self-employed agents, whoever they're with, whether they're with EXP or Talk or our old mob, Keller, which is where we kind of really met and bonded, Simon, didn't we?
We formed a very strong bond at Keller, it's fair to say, for all sorts of reasons.
One that was really successful in the end.
Yes, it was.
Before you two have a little loving about Keller and your time there, a lot of people will know you, Simon, being around the industry, being in the industry. If there's an industry event going on, we'll see you there. We've met recently at a couple of events, but where did it all begin for you? So let's go back before we sort of come up to the modern day. Where did it all begin?
Well, this is going to make Russell smile. I wanted to be Prime Minister.
Okay.
And he's going to love this even more. A Conservative Prime Minister.
What? Have you changed?
I went to study politics at the University of Essex in Colchester.
Okay, right.
Did it for 2 years. Hated studying politics. So I dropped out of the university, worked for a local newspaper, loved business. So I went back and did a business degree for 3 years. Did 3 years of a business degree, loved marketing. And actually I had two paths to go down. I was really good at HR and I was really good at marketing. And I was doing really well and I went down the marketing route. Partly because I actually, fancied the marketing lecturer.
Really?
Yeah, she was amazing, and I really liked her. She was brilliant as well.
Is your wife going to watch this podcast?
Oh, she knows. She knows. But she knows the name Debbie has some significance in my life. But that sent me down the marketing route. I decided I love newspapers, so I liked being a newspaper. So I wanted to work for newspapers at that point. I worked for Northcliffe, the largest regional newspaper.
Yeah.
So I ran marketing for them. Then I ended up at the Daily Telegraph. I'm a Northerner because they call it Telegraph, not Telegraph. Was there for a couple of years. Was made redundant. That was an experience of being made redundant when they shut down my department. And that was an interesting kind of life because I'd wanted from very young to work for a national newspaper, and it all came crashing down.
And why? Because you saw that as kind of glamorous in some way?
A friend of mine said at my wedding that when I went on holiday, I'd often introduce myself as Simon Leadbetter, Daily Telegraph. And it was amazing. That business card, got me into places that nothing else would have got me into. Saying I was from a national newspaper opened all sorts of doors for me.
I can imagine back in those days.
And that was powerful. The Daily Telegraph, no one wanted to upset a national newspaper. Yeah. Still don't, to be honest with you. So I did that for a couple of years, was made redundant, was scanning around and tripped, and an employment person put me in financial services. So I worked for Abbey National. Then I worked at Barclaycard. I sold more PIP than anyone else in the UK.
Right.
Hang on, the PIP that's now being railed against by society on the basis of mis-selling.
Yeah.
So basically, you're responsible for the PIP mis-selling crisis.
Yeah, I resigned over the mis-selling crisis.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Because I demonstrated that the number of people we were selling it to wouldn't be able to claim it.
Well, because you realised it was being missold.
I just knew, basically, I didn't know it was mis-selling at the time. I just said, if only 56% of people in our database can claim it, and our target is to sell it to 75%, there's a mismatch between the two figures there. Had a massive standard. I got a nickname as Slammer, because I slammed a door when I walked out of a meeting with my boss, and had a long walk around with the CEO. And
so it's a big conscience thing then? On the basis, I mean, would you go as far as to say it was fraud?
I think it was... Was it? No, I think it was what they were doing wasn't illegal per se. It was just
unethical,
very unethical. But welcome to financial services.
Wow! Even though it's one of the most regulated sectors in the country,
there's a lot that goes on in financial services that is very grey area, and I would say from my experience, and it's not illegal. Caveat emptor, buyer beware.
Is it a bit like the MP expenses scandal? It's not illegal. But you shouldn't have done it.
Yeah. They don't do it. They're
all on car claims now, aren't they?
They don't break the law because they don't break the law because they can't break the law. The case they are, they get caught and they're absolutely slammed. And there's all sorts of rules about it. But the global financial crunch and all that kind of stuff just shows there's a lot of dodgy stuff going on in financial services. I was there in financial services for a number of years. Then started my own company. I ran that for a couple of years, a marketing agency. Sold that in 2006. Ended up working for a dragon off Dragon's Den.
Which one?
Doug Richard, who was the American tech entrepreneur.
The bald guy. Yeah, he only lasted one or two series.
Two series.
Yeah.
He was a tech entrepreneur.
How was that, being invested in by a dragon?
Well, I worked for him as his chief marketing officer. And basically, we profiled fast growth startups. So we profiled 5,500 venture capital backed startups. You may have heard of a couple of little ones we profiled, like LinkedIn. Ocado.
Wow.
We worked with the team at Microsoft and Apple and Google, the investment teams, trying to find the next big things.
So they were businesses that he had invested in?
No, they were business. He invested in companies, but they were companies that we just profiled. There were 5,500 venture capital companies in Europe, and they were, to us, the future of where business would go.
Right.
So we profiled them, we understood the leadership, the strategy. They all burnt money like there was no tomorrow. So none of them made a profit.
Yeah. That rings a bell.
But they were growing at extraordinary rates, and they've shaped the world we live in today.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the company was bought by Dow Jones. So that went into an interesting place during the global financial crisis. I've always wanted to be my own boss. So I kind of thought, no, I'm employed again. I don't want to be employed. Yeah. Cast around, couldn't find anything, and ended up back in financial services for a few years. So I worked for Prudential and AXA for a few years, and eventually I just had enough.
Right.
So I started my own business. I discovered the whole world of clean tech, so clean technology, renewables, and all that kind of stuff, which we did these presentations when I was working for the Dragon, bringing together investors and smart companies. If it was media tech, so games or fun stuff, they could raise the money like that.
Yeah.
So people like King and Candy Crush.
All that, exactly.
Massive.
Yeah, absolutely. All those games, all those kind of things. They would raise money very quickly. tech, as in proper tech, the hard stuff, the science stuff, couldn't raise the money. So I launched a business called Blue and Green Tomorrow because we want the world to be blue and green tomorrow as it was yesterday. You're going to love that, Mr. Quick. So very woke, but basically very capitalist. We basically saw a good way to make money with these companies. We want to connect investors with the smart green companies. Ran that for 7 years. I'm sure we'll talk about it. Had an interesting blip in the middle of it.
What do you mean a blip?
Let's expand that.
Yeah.
So now, if I get emotional at this, it's because actually it's probably some
many do
unexplored kind of issue on it. Is we nearly went bankrupt in the process of it.
So 3 to 4 years in.
Yeah. So I started in 2010, 2013. We hit a real financial crisis. The business was taking off, costs were taking off, revenue hadn't. I was a terrible businessman, and I made some bad decisions. And I remember sitting on a sofa in the room with my wife going, we've got £1.67 left.
Total, not just in the business.
Total. By this time, we'd lost
our house. Anywhere. So anywhere. Business accounts, personal accounts. £1.67.
By this time, we'd lost our house in Notting Hill.
What, repossessed?
I'd sold it to keep the business afloat.
But it had to go.
It had to go. I just couldn't afford to keep things going.
Yeah.
We'd burnt through the cash and the equity we had in that. And it's like, sorry, I nearly swore. It's like, wow, I failed on every front. And then I don't know quite how it happened, but a couple of things happened with a guy helped me out financially with a bit of money just to keep us going, pay our bills for the next few months. I can't thank my father-in-law enough because he stepped in and helped us out with our rent at the time.
And hang on, let's just dwell on that for a second. That is not an easy conversation to go to your wife's father with your hand out and to say, I need some financial help.
And he's done it more than once in our lives.
How did that go? How do you do that?
Well,
and how do you prepare yourself to knock on the door, presumably without your wife, and say...
Well, I'm going to sound like a coward now. Actually, my wife did it.
Right.
My wife's always been my business partner. And she had the conversation. And it was tough. And it was horrible. And,
especially the pride for you, Notting Hill, living in...
I don't think... It took me a long time from the emasculating feel of that. It was so humiliating. I owned a place in Notting Hill. I'd be Simon Leadbetter, Notting Hill, not Simon Leadbetter, Daily Telegraph. I had a balcony overlooking Colville Square and champagne every Friday night out.
And what year did you sell that place?
So we sold it in 2011.
And just think, what would it be worth now compared to 2011?
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh, I have lost, I know this, probably about £800,000-900,000 worth of equity.
Okay. We do go there, Russell Jonas. We go there.
Yeah, so that was an interesting experience, but we turned the business around.
So how? We need to dive into this. So you got £1.67 left. You've gone to your father-in-law and a friend. They have helped you financially, presumably. Then things start to get better, but they don't just happen overnight in terms of getting better. There's no coincidence. So you've changed something. What did you change to make things get better?
Slashed costs. Okay. I mean, if I'm honest with you, we slashed costs.
What, people?
People. Yeah, we had a team of at one point 12.
Yeah.
We had a subsidiary business that was also losing money, so we shut that down straight away. We took some really tough decisions.
So you had to lay people off.
So you had great clients and great contracts, but just burning too much cash.
Yeah, the revenue was not enough to meet the costs.
Yeah.
So, some great friends I made. Some of them who are still friends now, but it was a tough time.
You had to lay them off.
I had to lay them all off.
That's hard.
And it was, because it was a very small business. When you've got a small business, the people you work with, in a startup, they're kind of your friends.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I saved some of the friendships, not all of them. Some people won't even speak to me now.
Right.
And actually, it's funny, we were having a conversation before we started recording about paying bills.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I sold my house is because I needed to honour bills. And I wouldn't not honour my bills. And I had the money, I just had it in a house. And I could have gone, I'm going to declare myself bankrupt and I won't pay you. But that just, again, I'm a fool with ethics.
No, but
it just seemed unethical to me.
More of that wouldn't be the right thing to do.
No.
Right? Yeah.
What would you go back and tell your younger self now about that journey?
It would be spend more wisely. It would be very much unless you've got a large amount of capital behind you, and I know from the startup world, burn rates are perfectly normal and fine. If you've got the right investor.
So you mean spending more money than you've got in a pursuit of growing the business quicker. Yeah.
We would always talk to businesses when I was working for the venture capital world is, what's your runway? How long have you got where you can basically burn money
until you run out?
Sometimes without making any money in terms of revenue, because you were building something where someone could see the future.
Yeah.
You know, Reid Hoffman, who came and presented at who founded LinkedIn, he presented at one of our talks. He said, the first thing you do in any startup is build millions of eyeballs. Get millions of eyeballs on your business, and then you monetize them.
Yeah.
So monetize them. Take those eyeballs once you've got people addicted to your network or your business, and then you turn them into money, which is a venture capital startup mentality.
Yeah.
Unless you have that capital behind you, don't do that. Just don't do that.
Because you're the likelihood is you're going to crash and burn. Right?
You'll
just going to run
possibly
out of
go bankrupt. You might lose your house, and if you go bankrupt and lose your house, you may lose your relationship. And fundamentally,
so burning money in that pursuit as a strategy is fine, but doing it without that plan and without that intention, where you're running, let's say, a lifestyle business or a business where your intention is to be profitable, don't do that. So you've got to decide what kind of business you are.
And the thing I learned really is other people's money. Is if you really want to take a risk and you've got a great business idea, burn other people's money, not your own. You know, you can put your own time and sweat equity into a business, but if you've a good idea and you need 100,000, £500,000, £1 million, there is so much capital out there looking for businesses to find.
Yeah.
You need to know the right people to talk to.
And they don't mind it being risk focused either, which of course it is.
If they want safety,
separate business from personal, don't you? Often it gets.
And if they want a safety, they just put it in a savings account. These people want either to lose everything or get 1,000% return.
So you dodged a bullet 3 to 4 years in. So the next 2 or 3 years were more successful.
It was survival. We brought in a managing director. We made enough money to bring in a managing director, so things were going well. He basically said to me, it was a great conversation. We went out for a beer. A guy called Ben, again another great friend, and he said, "How much money could you earn if you had a job, Simon?" And I went, this much. He said, "This business, having looked at it, will only ever make you this amount of money. Why don't you get a job?"
What, less?
It was a lot less. It was a lot less. He said, "It's a great idea. It's in sustainability. Sustainability is now the fastest part in growing part of the economy. Then it wasn't. We were the lunatics at the time. We were the freaks.
I still are.
We'll get onto that.
In my book. But anyway. Let's save that for a political podcast.
Exactly. And it's like, literally, I could earn 3 times as much if I just walked out tomorrow and got a job. I didn't want a job, and I had discovered the whole world previously of this.
Why were you so obsessed with working for yourself?
Because I get bored very easily. I clearly am on a spectrum of ADHD. It's in my family, and it's quite obvious that's the case. I am very interested in something for a 6-month period, and I want to work on something, and I need to work on lots of different things to keep me interested. So the same job, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year, I am tearing up the furniture. If you've got a problem, I will fix it.
Because when I was doing the research for this today, you have had a lot of jobs. Your LinkedIn job list is like a league table.
Yeah, you've had. I didn't count. I think you've had about 15. I think, haven't you?
15. I think it's more like 22.
Yeah.
Wow.
You need to load more.
Even more.
Keep loading.
22 jobs.
I think. Well,
so hang on. That's probably, is that one for every year since uni? No, not quite.
About 1.5 jobs. Yeah, 18 months. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, a lot of that's because I was interim. So, you know, if you've got an interim person, it's always funny when I meet an interim person. So they're part-time, temporary, and they've been in a company for 5 years.
Yeah.
So what's interim about you?
Yeah.
Now, an interim person should go in for 6 to 12 to 18 months at a max, fix the problem, because they're very expensive as a day rate.
Yeah.
I was very expensive as a day rate. But then you bring in a permanent person who can manage the status quo. I'm a change agent. I change stuff. And if it's like we're fixed, I'm still going, I could still change things.
But you don't want to be the safe hand on the tiller, the consistent, run this for the next 5 years, business as usual guy.
So one of my psychological profiles I had done when I was going for one of these roles, for one of the senior roles as a contractor, was he will make your business better. He will make a terrible mess, have people around him who sweep stuff up.
Very good.
And that's me.
Yeah.
And knowing that about me, the only thing I can realistically do is be my own boss and go into companies and say...
Well, and do stuff for other people.
Do stuff for other people and say, look, we can, as peer-to-peers, I don't work for you, I work with you. If I feel like an employee, I'm running as fast as I can. But I'm happy to work with you. I'm happy to have a conversation with you as a peer and talk to you about how we can fix your problems.
Well, let's get onto the Unchained kind of methodology in a sec. But let's also, because we've missed out 2 rather big roles that you had. One was running marketing at Countrywide, Connell's Countrywide as it is now, and the other at Knight Frank. I mean, they're 2 big badges of honour, aren't they, in our sector?
And Knight Frank was the first into property, wasn't it? First.
No, I tripped and fell into Countrywide.
Okay.
Yeah, I tripped and fell into Countrywide. So that was the Alison Platt era with Sam Tyra and Helen Neumel was the CMO. I basically, I'd sold my business. I was thinking I'll do some charity work, but I still need to work. I'd not made enough money to retire, and it wasn't that kind of sum of money. A headhunter phoned me up and said, "Look, have you ever ever thought about working in a estate agency?" I went, "No, I hate them." Which is how I felt at the time.
Therein lies the challenge. As a marketing guy going into estate agency, change the perception of estate agents.
When I went to work for Prudential, I'd read a report that said the person who can make pensions sexy will clear up in this industry. And I had launched one of the most successful video events ever in pensions, which is everything ever you want to know about pensions but were too afraid to ask. And we had like 150,000 people watched it. So that was interesting. So he said, well, look, it's the biggest in the UK. Okay, now you got my interest. It's this day rate. They're in trouble. Okay, now you've got all the bells are ringing now. I'm really happy to go in. And I went as a lone wolf to look at the London side of the business. Things changed very quickly over the 18 months I was there. My CMO left. I got promoted into a group marketing director role. I merged all the marketing capability into one team. And we had some great success. We won the biggest promotional event we'd ever done. But in the end, it just didn't work out.
And a complicated business because it had multiple brands.
63 brands.
63 brands.
Even more now.
You also had the Alison Platt problem, which, look, as we're talking about that era, we should talk about, which is this fateful decision to split almost like a retail operation, estate agency. So sales separate from lettings and so on, which a lot of people at the time said was the wrong thing to do. I think it was proven that it was probably the wrong thing to do.
New fee models as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and tried to do the online fixed fee thing. I mean, Alison, with best intentions, didn't know what she was doing.
No, and I think she was very badly let down by the board.
Well, Peter Long also didn't know what he was doing.
I mean,
he was running Royal Mail at the time, which had huge problems as well.
Massive problems.
They couldn't deliver a letter the next day. I mean, which is
Let
kind
alone
of fun.
that tout leaflet.
Which is ironic.
Let alone the completion of a big property. So, I don't think there was huge competence. Let's be kind. There wasn't huge sector-related competence at the top of that business.
No. And I think in a state agency and lettings agency, you need to understand estate and lettings agencies.
Because it looks really easy, doesn't it?
It's really straightforward from the outside until you realise that very few people are actually any good at it.
Yeah.
And, there's a really narrow strip of people who are genuinely very good at estate and lettings agency.
Most of them have been on this podcast or about to.
Exactly. I mean, or to be honest with you, yes, a lot of them have gone off to be self-employed or to run their own businesses because they really know how to do it. And that was lacking massively in the leadership. We didn't have that level of understanding the industry. I mean, we'll talk about marketing because I think this industry needs outsiders to help with the marketing because the marketing is not very good. But when it comes to running a estate and letting
as a sector,
yes, as a sector,
the industry is not very good at marketing at all. I've been very critical of it. I mean, maybe you might need to be a little bit more guarded, but I think estate agents in particular are atrocious at marketing. They think marketing is sticking their listings on Rightmove. That isn't marketing. But they're not very good at marketing themselves as a business or a brand, which I guess is why Unchained was born. But we've got Countrywide now. We've got to get to Knight Frank. Yeah. Knight Frank is an even bigger feather in your cap, I think.
So, global head of marketing for Knight Frank and partner of Knight Frank, the flagship of high-end of estate agency. So again, I'd left Countrywide, and the same headhunter phoned me up and said,
"He's done all right out of it, hasn't he?"
Well, I was on a 30 to 40% commission, so he's made a lot of money out of me.
I need to give him a call.
We're still. We often have lunch.
Need to get him on board.
He often pays. He said, and I said, "Okay, what role have you got?" And he went, "Would you ever consider working in real estate again?" And I went, "No, never." After the whole
you hadn't got the drug, you haven't got the bug.
No, it was such a horrible experience when I was at Countrywide. It was literally cutting jobs, it was fixing stuff, it was a mess. It was firefighting, and often with very little outcome that was positive. We arrested, slowed the decline, but we didn't get where we needed to go. It's like we're closing branches and we're merging brands. It
was a mess.
Logical stuff.
Yeah.
And then I basically said at the end of when I said I'd never work in, unless it was one of the, a Knight Frank or a Savills.
What would we call them? A trophy brand.
Yeah. And he said, well, funnily enough, it's Knight Frank. They need an interim global head of marketing for 6 months while they find the permanent. Would you be interested? And I went, as it's Knight Frank, yes. So I went in there, and we'll talk more about it, but they said, the thing is, we don't want someone who wants the permanent job. I was there for 3 months, and they asked me to go for the permanent job. Right. So I was there for 2.5 years in the end. And to be honest with you, we it was probably my best period in real estate up to that point. I loved it. You know, it's amazing properties. It's an incredible brand. It is still in the 19th century in some ways, in the way it operates.
What are the first things you look at when you go into these businesses? What are you looking at straight away, Simon?
It depends if I'm going in as a business person or as a marketer. As a marketer, normally the first thing I do is I just have a good sniff of what the team looks like. Forget all the broader stuff I teach about marketing is who's on the bus here? Mm-hmm. Who have you got in your marketing organization and are they any good? Because the horrifying thing about marketers is most of them are really, really bad at marketing. Only 1 in 4 marketers in the UK has any qualification in marketing. So you wouldn't get an unqualified estate agent to sell your house, would you?
Yeah.
We'd want them to be property marked somewhere.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get an unqualified dentist to look at your teeth.
Yeah.
Why would you get an unqualified marketer to do your marketing? It's a science now. Even I struggle to keep up with where marketing. I was watching a video this morning and I'm thinking, I didn't know that about marketing. And I'm learning something new about marketing because it's moving so far on with the data and the science that we have. So the first thing is I look at the team. There I had lots of tribes who didn't really like each other, didn't work together. There were a lot of them and it was a car crash. They did what they'd always done, plus or minus 10%. So I basically said, we need to restructure the team. We'd had teams created because people liked each other rather than that they were good at their jobs. Essentially, I removed almost all the leadership in marketing and put a new leadership in. Some of them who are still there. How many years did I leave ago? 2020. Right. So 5 years later, some of them are still in their leadership positions and doing great stuff. I spent a lot of time working with Lord Andrew Hay, who was the head of the residential business and the head of the commercial business as well. Just really understanding what they needed marketing to do for them. Because we were very much below stairs in marketing within, there was the fee earners and there was the business services.
Yeah.
But I needed to build that relationship and see sales and marketing as 2 sides of the same coin. And therefore we needed to work more closely together. And we stopped a declining market share and turned it into a rising market share. And I'm pleased to say that since I left, it started to slide down again.
And why did you leave? Just the 18-month time was up?
I'd reached the point where I was going to start worrying the furniture. I'd done all the change that I could, and my desire was for more change. There was a massive project going on, and it was sort of being stopped for all sorts of investment reasons. So I was like, okay, that would have taken me for the next year to work on that massive project. That would have been interesting because that was really radical. I was approached by someone to start a business, so I resigned. Mm-hmm. I had 6 months' notice, so I wasn't worried. And then COVID struck just after I resigned, and all that investment in that new business disappeared. And I was like, I've just given up an amazing job. I've done it again. Yeah. I've done a terrible thing with my family.
What did your father-in-law say?
He may have helped us out again.
Expecting another knock on the door.
But yes, it's like, wow, I've really, really made a catastrophically bad decision here. Because I had a great job.
But you shouldn't be too hard on yourself on that. I mean, that was unforeseen. No one could foresee. No one foresaw COVID. Even the people that are employed and paid governmentally to foresee such things as COVID. No one foresaw it. So
a friend of my father-in-law had said a message that is, how does he keep doing it? Whatever happens, he just bounces back and does something else. It's like, well, that's what I learned. Being made redundant at the Daily Telegraph, 25 years earlier, had taught me that nothing is the end of the world.
Yeah.
Even if I had gone bankrupt with my business, it wasn't going to be the end of my world. It would just mean, well, I've learned something. I've learned how not to do it.
And that is really poignant because for entrepreneurs watching this, they will understand that look, you start something, it works, maybe it doesn't. If you start 5 things, 3 won't work, 1 will be okay, 1 actually will be the thing that people remember me by. Let's use the Bruce brothers as an example of that. They've had a few less successful endeavours. They've had one that everyone remembers because they took tens of millions of pounds off the table, right? But most people probably don't even put that best foot forward because they're concerned based on risk about the fact that they might fail, so they might lose some money. They have put the house on the line and they don't want to do that, or they don't think their wife or husband will let them do that. So I think, and we talk about this as a repeated theme
as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a repeated theme on this podcast, and there is, I guess, from us a message. The reason we get people like you on and others is to talk about the fact that that failure is not so scary. It is not so terminal. I'd also argue strongly, based on the failure that I had in eMove, that you've got to have the failure. The failure forms part of the journey.
It drives me insane.
There is no one, right? I'm telling you, there is no one that we now look upon in society as a success that has not had a failure. They might not admit it, and they might not talk about it. You might have to dig pretty deep on Google to find it. But even the likes of Musk and Branson and Sugar and so on, they've all had the failure. The failure doesn't get talked about, but it is part of the journey. If you don't push the envelope, you're never going to get the reward.
And we have a real, if you go to America and you talk to venture capitalists in America, as I did working through a dragon, the first thing they'll ask any entrepreneur is, when have you had a failure?
It's important.
They want to know that you know what it takes and the risks you need to embrace, and actually have failed and gone, you know what? Failure is not getting up again. Failure is going, you know what? I learned a really important lesson. I know one entrepreneur, and he's very well known, so I won't mention his name. And he had one business and it was a massive success. He's made a lot of money and now he's teaching other businesses how to be entrepreneurs. And I know it's so naive. They had one success. Right. They have never failed. Yep. They don't know what it is to sit on a sofa with your wife in tears going, we've got £1.63.
Yeah.
And then pick yourself up, do it again, and then do it again and do it again. And that's what entrepreneurship is.
Keep looking forward.
Just keep looking forward. Fail forward, as we used to say at Keller Williams, is you fail forward.
We haven't really got to that Keller Williams bit. Did
you say this was 30 minutes? I mean, you know how I'm concerned.
A little bit longer.
Yeah, well, the Keller Williams thing, obviously, we both know each other from that experience. Let's just say, from my point of view, an experience that was full of promise that was not delivered. But again, I would argue strongly that as part of my journey, I'm sure you'd say the same, Simon, it was kind of important, both in terms of what I learned going to the US and talking to American agents. I probably wouldn't have done that if I hadn't got become part of the Keller thing. And the people that you end up knowing, I mean, Simon included.
Loads of people. I mean, it was
I've
a network.
I have to say, and do I need to tread carefully? No, bollocks, probably not. I have probably made a significant amount of lifelong friends from that Keller experience, most of whom ended up being disgruntled. And we ended up with this little club being formed, which was of, the disgruntled Keller Williams people that were bought in on the basis of a promise that was unable to be seen through for a whole bunch of reasons. But it was ultimately, it was a learning exercise. It was good. I actually did financially. I did very, very well out of Keller. Very, very well. In terms of selling my shares at the end of it based on a bit of a dispute, which I can't go into for legal reasons. But I came out of it. The sad thing is with Keller, and I know you came out of it okay, some people did not.
No.
Some people lost a lot of money based on a prophecy, a philosophy, not from Keller US. Actually, there's a lot of people making lots of money in Keller Williams internationally, particularly in America. Let's just say, this is my opinion, you feel free to disagree with it. You have to have the right people running the top of the business. Keller Williams UK did not have that, as I think is now pretty demonstrated and proven. But also, just because your model works very, very well in the United States, where it has a different legal structure and a different culture, do not think that you can literally cookie cutter it, copy and paste it into Britain. There are some models, like EXP, in my opinion, that have translated exceptionally well into Britain because you've got a Brit running it and someone that understands the difference between the US and the UK. Keller Williams did not understand that there was a difference between the UK and the US. And I remember having a conversation with one of the principals of Keller Williams UK, one of the founders of Keller Williams UK, Diane Griffin. She would remember this if she watched this, where I argued with her strongly that you cannot just replicate the United States and the UK. And I said, we're different. Our business is different, our culture is different, our legal system is different, and we don't have loads of self-employed people. So that step from one brand to another is different. And she vehemently disagreed with me.
What were your challenges there?
Well, I mean, I went in to be their CMO to basically build their marketing. I mean, for me, Keller Williams was and is still the leader of self-employed agencies globally. I mean,
just 25,000 agents.
I mean, they're just huge globally. There are some amazing others. IOD's come forward, EXP's come forward. These are all amazing models, but they all actually come out of the Keller Williams world. It makes they were the founders of the model.
Well, EXP is a derivative of Keller Williams. It is. Because Glenn Sanford, who's the founder of EXP, was at Keller Williams, and he adjusted the model.
I'll never knock Keller Williams as a model. I think your point is right. The leadership in the UK just was wrong. And absolutely, we are two countries divided by the same language. You cannot apply what happens in the US to the UK. We are different. And we got
And
Keller
Foxtons
Williams.
and Purple Bricks both found that the other way, didn't they? Yeah.
Tried to make a foray into the US and failed. Yeah.
We're very different markets. Even at Knight Frank, we had businesses around the whole world, but we didn't have the USA. We had partnerships.
Yeah.
Such a different market. We had Newmarket and Douglas Elliman. Newmark and Douglas Elliman, commercially and residentially. We didn't have Knight Frank in the USA. It's a mistake to think it's the same market. It's 50 different countries, effectively, with different laws and different ways of doing things. We actually did some great marketing work. But again, the promises that were made to me were not met.
Yep.
I don't say much more than that.
And that was the thing.
And that was writ large across everyone I knew, and this group of people who came together saying, why is what's promised not what's being delivered?
Just to be clear, the culmination of Keller Williams' activities in the UK is that the business that owned the franchise for Keller Williams United Kingdom, which was granted by the United States, went bust.
Yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, the main business, Griffity Limited, I think it was called, that held the franchise, that ran the UK and then granted franchises to the likes of Essex and Central London and Oxford and so on. That business went bust about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Owing a lot of money.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah. A lot of money.
So you come out of there, Simon.
Yeah. So
time to look at what you're going to do again.
Yeah. Again,
Chat with the
I
father-in-law.
literally go. That's it. I'm now going to run my own business, and then Josh Rayner calls me.
Okay.
And there's a great role as the CEO of Fine & Country. So I went into the CEO of Fine & Country, amazing brand. So the nice thing is I'd learnt corporate from Countrywide. Yeah. I'd learnt high-end from Knight Frank. I'd learnt self-employed from Keller Williams. What I didn't realise from the outside looking at Fine & Country is it's lots of independence. I never really worked with independents, and I loved the independents. So I got to know all these individual entrepreneurs who ran their own agencies. It's like, this is really interesting. But by this point, I'd gone, I am turning 50. I need to run my own business. I have to again. This is the moment. So it kind of came. It was they didn't want me to leave. I didn't want to leave in the way that I did, but in the end, it wasn't going to work. I want to take it a different direction, which I've gone in for the interview. Is this is an amazing brand? Let's build the brand. They wanted, look, we want to basically promote our tech to our network. Different strategy. So in the end, it was like, you know what? I need to go my own way. Thought about what I should do, and then launched Unchained.
So tell us what Unchained is. So can we get, so you're famous for your 30 years of marketing. Can we get 30 years of marketing into 30 seconds, Simon?
Yeah, actually, I can actually do it as a video for people who sign up for it sometimes. So I've learnt over the years, marketing follows a very straightforward process, and most people don't follow the process. And the process is called ISTAR. And it's a very simple process which I teach on 30 years of marketing in one day. Is you start with insight. What do you know? What do you not know? What do you know about your customers, your market, your competitors? Understand that. Only when you have that should you develop a strategy. If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter what decisions you make. So have a really clear strategy that other people understand. Everyone understands. That's our North Star. We're going there. Talent, the T of this star. Who's on the bus? Do we have the right people in the business and outside the business and working with us and advising us to do what we need to achieve? Action, doing stuff. Everyone starts with action. I must be busy. Yeah. I must do stuff. But if you don't know who your audience is, you don't have a strategy, you don't have the right people, what the hell is the action going to be like? And finally, the core of marketing is to create profit. So unless you know your results, the return, then what are you doing your marketing for? It's not just pretty pictures and branded merchandise. It's actually a very commercial function. The first time I've worked in marketing where I've not had a P&L, as head of marketing, was in real estate, in property. Right. Before then, my marketing generated profit through direct marketing. Yeah. So I had a budget of £1, 2, 3, 4, £5 million budgets.
But to bring in
10 times that.
10 times more. Yeah.
10 times that. You know, my long-term run rate was 10 times. 10x.
And when we were just waiting to record, you gave me a copy of The Voice of the Agent out today. So tell us about the Voice of the Agent, how people get involved, how people get to read some of these amazing stats in here that nobody knows who the governing bodies are of.
No, it's almost like they need someone to help them with their marketing. Actually, that would be really useful.
Or
PR is the most, as you know, highest ROI in marketing you can get.
Say that again.
It's the highest ROI in marketing you can get. But as we know, talent is the fundamental thing, getting the right people on the bus. So the Voice of the Agent. So I started it 3 years ago as part of a project because we all know who the noisy people are in the industry. we may be three of us sitting around here being the noisy people. I want to know what everyone thinks in the industry. Insight. Start with insight. I want to understand what people on the shop floor actually think's going on. Talk about their business. So we did a research project. It became the voice of the agent. And we thought, let's keep repeating it. Now, the first one was, we'll do it for ourselves. And I produced it and I thought, you know what? Let's just put it out there. Let's give if you work in a single branch office in Skegness, how do you know what the best agents are doing? No one's going to teach you. No one's going to tell you. The boss might say, come here, I'll show you how it's done. Shudder.
Yeah.
But it's like, look, we can, because of the data we've got, we can break out the agents who are growing and say what they do. So we've basically repeated it in 2023, 2024. This year we've broken up into 4 big chunky parts. Because actually the survey in 2024 took an hour to complete. And we just saw it in the response rate. So people just gave up halfway through. Someone even wrote, I'm bored halfway through the survey. So we know the results at the end weren't as good. So we broke up into 4 parts. So the hot part you're holding there is the sales, lettings and marketing part. We're just wrapping up the PropTech Portals AI part. Russell's be participating in one about regulation, housing, government and all that, and how we're going to fix the housing problem. And at the end of the year, we have something called Voice of the Consumer, where we basically say, what do customers think compared to what agents think?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the differences between what customers think and what agents think is always quite dramatic.
Yeah.
And then we make it completely freely available. So if you go to thevoiceoftheagent.com, you can just download the report for free.
Fantastic.
And we just want the industry to be better. And you start with insight. Let's give the industry the insight and you can make informed decisions.
And it really is a fabulous report. I mean, obviously, it's the second year that you've done it, and I'm delighted to be part of it in a very small way. But for agents to understand what other agents are thinking, but the key bit, the mismatch between actually what you think consumers want as an agent and what they actually want. I mean, if you can join those dots, I would say that when it comes to marketing, that's pretty fundamental, really. So, in other words, asking someone what their problem is, you then become the solution to it. You're probably going to be on the right road, aren't you?
And don't sell. The best products and services are bought, not sold.
Yeah.
Because people want them.
Yeah.
We were talking about watches before we started recording. Patek Philippe does a bit of brand marketing.
Yeah, and Rolex.
But, Rolex, bit of brand it spends a lot. But relative to what its revenue is.
But they do the opposite, actually. They basically tell you what you can't have.
Yeah, you can't have it. If you need to ask the price, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
And now, for an agent, self-employed or corporate, is you want to be telling a story in your local area that makes you interesting, shows that you understand it better than us. But knowing who your audience is means you can tell a story that resonates. If you're just selling...
Be the Google of your marketplace.
Be the Google of your marketplace. Be the expert. Be the person who goes, okay, so all these stats that get published, they're national or they're regional. I'm going to drill it down to Boxmoor. That's where I live in Hertfordshire. Now drill it down to Boxmoor. And what I think this data says is this. I'm not selling anything. I'm not promoting anything. I'm just saying I know this area better than anyone else.
Yeah. Is there an amount of money you think that an agent or an agency business should spend on marketing as a percentage of its revenue?
More than they are would be a good answer. But there's some hard science behind it. If you're launching, say you're a self-employed agent and you want to go out and earn £100,000, this will terrify them. You should spend £30,000 on your marketing.
As the initial thing to
for the
get
first
you going.
year, and probably something similar to that in the second year.
So you've got to invest in it.
So you've got to invest in it. You've got to spend enough money.
Back to your earlier story.
Yeah. People got to know that you exist.
But then after a period of time, it's not like you've spent it, you've got to keep spending it, because people now will be thinking, well, hang on a second, after I've paid my splits, there's no profit in that. This is the initial thing to get you going.
Well, once you're established,
ROI.
You become an attraction business then, don't you?
Once you're established,
personal brand.
once you're established, 8 to 12%.
Yeah.
Now, what's really interesting is in our results, about 8 to 12%.
Yeah, 10% I always worked on, but the times were slightly different there.
If you are the market leader, and this is where it's really hard, 5%.
Yeah.
If you are number one, and genuinely you are number one, I mean really number one, either locally, nationally, regionally, how it is, you don't need to spend as much on your marketing because you've built a critical flywheel of
because you've already built brand.
You attract.
But you've got to keep that going. But I've got a question for the audience, actually, particularly the decision makers amongst you, particularly those in corporate world, but even in independent estate agency land. I wonder how many of you can right now tell yourself what you spend on marketing as a percentage of your revenue. I bet most of you don't even know.
Ooh, answers to Russell. Answers to Russell. Simon, you seem in a great place. When I arrived here this morning, we were both bright and early. You were beaming, happy, just taking in everything in. So life is good.
Life is really good. Yes, we've doubled our turnover. We've got some amazing clients. Some of our clients are asking us to do even more work for them. We've got a great team working with me now.
Business is good. How's life?
Life is really good. I have the most supportive wife who's also my business partner. We're 50-50 owners of the business.
I mean, long suffering. I'd say.
Very long suffering. Yeah, 20 years. I don't know why she puts up with me, but we're on this journey together, and she's my biggest fan.
I think get Emily on the sofa, actually, in the chair, I think, at one point.
I actually think she'd do it.
Yeah, what if we should?
What a fascinating story.
It is.
Another fascinating story.
Isn't it brilliant just to hear, the insights in the journey that lead to someone, as Simon's just said, being happy, being successful, being well known in the industry and so on. I think it's, look, to us, it's all about the journey. No, well done. Congrats. Seriously.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
That's it, the end of episode 31. So if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up so that we can get even more great guests on. And the next one is coming up. It's going to be a very interesting story once more. So all it is for me to say is it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.